My name is Billy Jackson. I'm a math professor at North Shore Community College. Myself and Sonia Gamby will be beginning the discussion and moderating the discussion, and then we'll be opening it up to the floor for questions after. So here joining us, we have Scott Courtemanche. He's an automation engineer at Abiomed. We have Tom Maloney, who's a manager of robotics at engineering manager at Milipore Signa. To my right here, we have Ryan Weaver, who's a manager of robotics at Axis New England. And second from the left, we have Ghislain Depault, who's an automation and robotics project leader at GE Aviation. And I'd like us all to give a round of applause for our four guests. So for our four experts here on the panel, we'd just like to ask you to first briefly tell the audience about how the revolution in AI and robotics and automation has transformed your workforce.
Sure. What we see a lot with the people that are coming into the industry, into our workforce, is the hunger for information. So we have cell phones where at a moment's notice we can learn about the news around the world to our friend and next door neighbor just by going onto Facebook. What we see that is translating into how operators are working with the equipment on a day-to-day basis. How the machine is performing, how are they meeting their targets, and getting that information in a reliable way to them, and a way that they can use that information makes them much more productive for themselves and much more fulfilling for their job work, but also it helps with the business and industry in driving that technology on how much more information they can get and how they receive that information.
Hi, Laura explained very well. I'd like to emphasize on that. iPhones actually started a decade ago. That's what we're talking about. And I'd like to start with a personal slice of life. My son was 16 at the time, a decade ago, and he told me, "Dad, I want an iPhone." I said, "Why do you want an iPhone? I mean, I have a flip phone, and that's enough, you know?" And he said, no, Dad, you don't understand. You got life at your fingertips. And that struck me. I had to stop for a little while and say, God, he's right again. So I said, okay, I understand why you want an iPhone, but you're paying for it. Okay. So what this brought today, everybody has a smartphone in our workforce, okay, in our group. And the communication is quick. We got Scott just said it. So we have this information right away, not a day later, it's right away at your fingertips, okay? So we're overflown, on the other end, we're overflown with information. So it's our job, it's your job to sort it wisely, okay? It's easy to divert and not stay focused on what we need to do, okay? So this technical revolution, okay, has got a major impact on teleworking also. There are more and more remote jobs, okay, that we can do remotely. It's in constant progress. On the other end, we lose the human touch. So working in your office at home, it's fine, no problem. But we lose that, I find we lose that face-to-face human touch that we need to have, okay? Yes, cameras are good, it's good, but you lose that little feeling a little bit. Positive thing, it's got an impact on self-education. There's a lot of easy tutorials online, so you get you can learn by yourself. You don't need to show up in class all the time. It depends what you need to do. When you get at a job, well, there's no more class, so you need to get going and need to be self-educated, and that's a good that's a skill that you need to develop.
So what do you do when the two people to your right have covered the topics that you're going to talk about? Good luck for this, Ryan. No, I have to really parrot what Scott has said. With the technology advancement in the workforce, and I'm going to focus on our operators, the people that do the day-to-day assembly of our product, is they're so used to using technology, they ask us, why do you still have us fill out paperwork? Why do you still give us drawings to work from? Why do you give us printed SOPs? Give us something different. And what they're doing is they're challenging us as the leadership in the engineering departments in our companies is how to automate that information. So you need to think of automation not just as automation of the assembly process, but information automation, how to get the right information to the right person at the right time, and how do you automate that so you don't have to require additional personnel to continually update that. And that's one of the projects we're working on. I think that's the major impact that we have, and good luck, Ryan.
Thanks. Appreciate it. I'll work with the scraps. So I'll give you guys two things. The first I'll give you is from our perspective at Access New England, and then the other is kind of from our customers. So, you know, we talk about smartphones, technology. There's an expectation coming in as maybe a new employee that you understand, you know, computers and smartphones and getting your email set up and things like that. There's not a lot of hand-holding for these processes anymore. It's just because of how ubiquitous it's all become in our lives, there's an assumption that you understand how to use all this technology. And so one of the things that we see that's a benefit to our customers, but can sometimes be something you need to manage, is the always-on nature of having this technology at your fingertips. You know, if I get an email from a customer at 7 o'clock at night, I'm going to try to get back to them if I can, which is great for them, but can be a bit hard to have kind of a decent balance between when you're at work versus when you're at home. And so that's something that we face is from a professional standpoint that you have to be wary of and, you know, implement the right systems in your life to make that work for you. The other thing that I'll give you is from our customer standpoint. So we help implement automation and robotic technologies for our customers. And so from the perspective of like an operator or technician on the floor who maybe has automation now deployed into their work cell, all of a sudden they go from a very manual process to being collaborating with a robot or some automation technology in their work cell. And so they have kind of two choices. They can either work with this technology or shun it. And you know, I had a great quote from a probably 65, 70-year-old machinist who said that, you know, he had a lot of colleagues from years ago that when the CNC machines came in that said, you know what, I'm not gonna, I want to, you know, push this automation, this technology away. Whereas he embraced it. And he's like, that's why I still have this job. And they're, you know, working at, you know, the fast food chain down the street. So I guess I'll pass that. I'll end that there. But so.
You hang out. You get to start.
Boy, I feel lucky now. So.
All right. So your industries obviously face challenges. And I think that challenges are also a source of opportunity, right? So could you maybe give us an example of one or two major challenges your industry faces?
So I think that one challenge to the point of as we're implementing automation and technology in factories and places where, you know, these are maybe existing manual tasks that are being automated. One of the challenges is employee acceptance of this automation. And so, you know, particularly in places where with an extremely strong union presence, we can see some real challenges where there's not a big picture understanding of what the automation will do for the company as a whole. Anecdotally, I'll tell a quick story about a small company in Beverly that we worked with on the North Shore, and you know, they applied a couple of robots in their facility, and they actually ended up laying off 10 workers because they were replacing that job. So those 10 employees were gone. Their workforce was slightly scaled down, but their business tripled. And so as a result of that, they ended up hiring back all of those 10 people for quality control inspection jobs, and then hiring another 20 more in order to supplement because they now had such an edge in their market niche that their delivery times were excellent, their quality was excellent, and they could respond very quickly to orders. And so the automation really helped them grow and helped their employees grow into higher paying, better jobs. So you know, it's one of those things we fight that on the front end, the expectation of automation.
The biggest challenge that we're having in my group right now, and my group handles all of the automation processes, equipment to manufacture our product, is I have a very good base of preventative maintenance technicians that do changeovers and do the preventative maintenance on the equipment and can do some minor repairs. But as soon as something goes wrong where we need some higher level troubleshooting skills, I'm having to move right into an engineer and at some point go right up to the development engineer that worked on that piece of equipment. I'm having a real difficulty in filling that mid-level role where we have people with the electromechanical skills, a little bit of electrical, a little bit of mechanical, a little bit of hydraulic, a little bit of programming that can go in and really look at a process, figure out, is it a bad switch? Is it a hardware problem? Is it a variability in the raw material coming into the process? And so now I'm using engineers to perform those functions, and when they get really good at it, we have people with 4-year degrees. They want to move up and on, and so we're continually rolling over this mid-level where we really need people that's what they want to focus on, those hands-on people. And I'll be honest, that's where I started. I have a 2-year degree in electromechanical engineering. I'm now head of the manufacturing engineering department at work, but I started with a hands-on. My original goal was just to sit there and I want to get in and touch the machines, troubleshoot, and make it work. So that gap is fairly large right now for us.
Tom, I understand what you meant. So I'll try my best. Okay, so yeah, so the key skills are needed, okay? There's a lot to talk about, but one of them is versatility, okay? Knowledge on many topics. So as you may be studying in programming, for example, well, to have knowledge about electrical, mechanical, hydraulics, pneumatics, vision, this is all important. People will listen to you, and this will help you in your future, okay? So just stay tuned with what's going on around you and be ready to accept that I need to learn this, okay? I didn't study in this field, but it's good to know, okay? Flexibility. This is very important, okay? We live that all the time in our group. Be positive on last-minute demands as it may be perceived as a personal demand, okay? It's not, okay? If somebody asks you for a last-minute demand, can you change this? Can you do this? Well, it's all because of competitiveness, okay? We live in a competitive world, okay? The whole key is efficiency. So we need to be efficient in what we do, efficient in what our group does, okay? To make sure we strive. Asia is a lot closer than it used to be, believe me. Okay, so we need to stay competitive at the forefront all the time. Another thing is another recommendation, or maybe it's important to accept that the job that things that you don't like their job is not a buffet where you pick where you like to do. Okay, but see this rather as an opportunity to shine. Okay, I can do this. Okay, I don't like it. Okay, but somebody's asking me to do this, and I can show that I can do it. Okay, and also remember one thing very important. Okay, you go out of school, you get an interview, you get a job. I say, hey, I've done it. Okay, I'm done. This is only the beginning. Okay, your job is a continuous live interview. Believe me. That's what happens.
Yeah, I think what everybody said really echoes what I view also is, bringing skilled labor into manufacturing. I think manufacturing has earned a stigma of being dirty and low pay and unfulfilling, and I think maybe at one point in time that was a warranted piece. But I think today the world is very different. Work environments are extremely clean. I've been in machine shops, you can eat off the floor, and they're machining all day 24/7, and they're maintained that way. They're well lit. You have a sense of fulfillment. So bringing what that laborer is doing and tying it back to the mission of the business, of how it impacts, what they're making, how it impacts the end user. There are many ways to do that. The way we kind of help with the manufacturing side of things with our operators is we have patient days. So our product goes in and touches patients. We bring those patients into the building. They tell us their story and how our device helped them continue on in their life. And the operators get to meet and hear those stories. And it really drives home why we work the long hours, why we work so hard, and that their job does matter because it does impact people's lives. So finding the fulfillment in manufacturing and being willing to be skilled, adapting to change, being willing to try something new, that's where we can benefit industry as a whole, whether we're from a laborer all the way up through engineering, engineering management. I mean, we need that skilled labor that carries through all the way.
Best? Okay. Many people in this audience are students and faculty, and a few of you already touched on the idea of, what future careers are going to look like, about working in support roles and working in mid-level troubleshooting roles and whatnot. And in academia, we're very aware that we're preparing students for careers that don't even exist yet, right? So what is something that you think that colleges and universities in the US are doing well right now to prepare students for the workforce of the future? And what do you think colleges and universities could be doing better?
That's a good question. I look at, we have a very large co-op pool that comes into Abiomed very regularly through our connections. And what I see while interacting with those co-ops is there's a lot of focus on a lot of the sexier jobs, the programming side of things, the design side of things, and maybe less so on the manufacturing. It's wonderful to design something. It's another thing to be able to manufacture and maintain that. So what I think the schools could be helping with is showing kind of what manufacturing can be and how the jobs that don't exist today could be going towards that. So how do I apply what I'm learning in my programming class to data management? How do I apply what I'm learning in my statistics class to how a machine is performing, or how efficient an operator is able to work? It's taking those and giving them a direct influence on what's happening today so that they can start thinking about how they can do it better tomorrow. I think that's a great area of growth in helping get people more comfortable in going to this manufacturing environment, because as you said, Asia is not that far away. And if we want to stay competitive, we want to keep jobs in America, we need to be able to do that and be able to adapt and learn. And I think Tom kind of hit on it too, is being willing to start near the bottom, being willing to learn about those electromechanical systems as a programmer, or learning about software as someone who's majoring in mechanical. I think that makes you a much more rounded person, so as the industry moves forward, you're able to adapt and execute on those things that need to happen to make yourself continue to be relevant and participate in the workforce.
Thank you, Scott. What colleges and universities are doing well? I think they adapt well to the best they can to the technology. It's hard to follow. Everything is moving quick, but I think they're doing a good job at it, developing new and useful learning programs. Okay, as you know, as Scott just said, some people are learning things that you don't even know you're learning, not even coming to the market yet. It's in preparation too. What could be done better? I find just before I go in there, in our group, we use a lot of work-term students. Okay, we co-op students. We encourage that a lot. Okay, we have we're a group of about 50 people, and we have about 4 to 5 students every semester. So it's good. So we're putting a lot of effort at it. So work-term for all and everyone. This should be implemented in every school, every university. It's important, okay? As you study, you learn what's going on over there, okay, in the industry. Keep a close relationship with the industry to understand the real needs, okay? It's important that the programs are relating to what's going on in the industry. And organize industrial visits. Go out there, see what's going on. Sometimes it's misleading because you work here in a lab, in classrooms. It's not always that clean. It's not always that what you think it is, okay? And you get to in the workplace, you say, holy, that's not what I thought it was, okay? And then I studied all these years, and that's what it is, okay? It's important to know that. So organized industrial visits is very important. So that would be a very good for the students.
I agree with all of the things that are being done right. Talk a little bit about where we could have some improvement. We do some work with universities on senior capstone projects. And our level of participation varies widely based on the faculty moderator. Those of you who work with us out here in the industry, don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing we can do is say no. Okay, ask. We had one student project where they gathered up parts and cobbled something together from bits and pieces that they had left over in the lab. And I said, why didn't you guys just ask us to buy that for you? We had a budget of $10,000 for you. It was clear in the opening letter that we sent to you. Things like that that are missed, that can help us or help you an awful lot. Another thing is to look at what software packages and what good practices industry is using. We use SolidWorks. We find a lot of universities are pushing SolidWorks, but a lot of the two-year schools are still working in AutoCAD. You have to understand what the job market is needing. While the training, you can move from one software package to another, but if we're looking at a resume and somebody who has a certification in SolidWorks versus someone that has a certification in AutoCAD, obviously we're going to go for that SolidWorks person because that's what we use. And the last thing is your outreach to your middle schools and high schools. I remember in the 70s, I went to a science exploration day at one of the local colleges. And that really got me going on the whole science, technology, and so on. And it was a lasting impression. And it was very simple experiments. It's freezing dandelions with liquid nitrogen. But to someone in 7th grade, that is just amazing and gets people to start looking into stuff. So keep up that outreach so that you have a good pipeline in the future for your students coming in here.
Thanks, Tom. So to kind of echo Scott's point from earlier, I think there's a perception sometimes with some of these kind of engineering and design type careers that, I meet a lot of students coming out of school who want to be a designer. They want to design jet engines and the whole thing, not just a piece of it. And I think what's kind of, I see it all the time, and I understand it. I think, coming out of school, you kind of feel like maybe that's what you're being groomed for. But the reality is, what the real job is maybe designing just some thermal block piece of that engine, and it's also a very senior position that you probably have to do 10, 15 years of work in order to get to. So sometimes it's understanding, to Tom's point as well, the reality versus kind of what maybe is out there. I'm going to also kind of come at this a little bit from left field, so I expect I'm probably not preaching to the choir for these folks, but one thing that I see a lack of is commercial and sales awareness from technical engineering and technical students. There is a very big piece of this industry that is, really in making products, but then also selling those products. And so we are an automation technology center, and so we work with companies like these guys and many others to help connect them and sell them the pieces and parts as well as the systems that will help them automate. And they also have products that need to be sold and so forth. And these are sometimes really complex things. You're not going to Amazon to buy a real factory industrial robot. This is something that an engineer or somebody with high technical aptitude needs to understand deeply, to understand your factory's problem, to then help you figure out what you need to do with it. So I see a lot of people that, the ones that do come out with some sales and technical or commercial aptitude are really gems to us. And I know there's a lot of organizations just like ours. So sometimes that hybridization of technical or an engineering plus kind of that business side of things, is something that we see a lack of.
This next question, actually, you described a situation where automation actually led to an initial layoff, but then they hired threefold more employees, so it was actually beneficial. I do think in general, though, the perception is, and maybe the reality is, that as automation begins to get incorporated more and more, there will be sort of a competition with these automated jobs. I recently read an article about robot-proofing education, so to speak, and how we can prepare students to succeed in this new era. And you all touched on a lot of different things that are important as far as adaptability, flexibility, which I appreciate. I wonder if you didn't have a personal insight, any other personal insights as to how these students can robot-proof themselves so that they can succeed in the future.
Well, I think sometimes it comes down to embracing the technology versus fighting it or trying to skirt around it. And I'll make my point relatively quick here, but I think there has been, if you do research into hiring people and things like that, sometimes the advice is to focus on the specialist, the person who's really good at the one thing, who's a really, really strong, like let's say mechanical engineer. And I can't help but to disagree with that in this kind of world of automation and robotics and that kind of stuff, where really it's this hybridization of, we see kind of this trifecta of mechanics, electrical, and computer programming or computer science, where really you need to have a good mix of those skills. So my advice would be to not focus exclusively in one zone, but to try to expose yourself to as much of all these little pieces as you can to be a dynamic and adaptable person.
I'm going to go right with what Laura said originally, teamwork, team member. I will take somebody who can work in a cross-functional team that will offer suggestions, bring in and help develop other people's ideas, be supportive of them. Being a team member is a huge, huge way to succeed in this business. And having a little bit of knowledge in everything is good, but if you can't work with people, you're just not going to succeed. The days of those individual contributors and I sit at my desk and I design and I build this one thing really don't seem to be there anymore. So working well with others, a variety of skills, I think is really the biggest for me.
Tom, is that a hard thing to assess in interviews?
Yes and no. If you get someone in an interview who will actually dialogue with you, and we try and ask questions to pull out information, and what have you done in a team project? What was your role in the team? Did you have a challenge on the team? How did you overcome that challenge? Was it an individual challenge? Was it something you messed up? How did you deal with that personally? Was it something another team member made an error on, or was it a global scope issue? So we try and pull those things out in the interviews. And in our interviews, we have people who focus strictly on technical and other people who focus more on fit, communication, etc. So interviewing is a huge skill, and I hope you guys do mock interviews with your people and ask the right questions to them.
Thank you. I just have to agree. Be a team player. In our industry, in GE Aviation, we push a lot to bring the culture to work as a team. If you work alone in your little corner, that's not where everything will happen. I have to agree with Tom here that we will select someone who is eager to work with somebody, with people, okay? It's important to listen to what people have to say. If you can learn, if you can adapt to, okay, the decision is not in my favor, but that's okay. I can live with that. Let's go for it, okay? So or on the other hand, if you stick with your opinion, no, it needs to work my way. That's not the way to. It needs to be a teamwork thing.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are hitting on all the cylinders on what I think is important also. But I think one of the other aspects of it, if we think about manufacturing a little bit and what it does, I always look at if my job is to make my job obsolete. And not to work myself out of a job, but I work myself into that next job, that next area of focus. So don't be afraid to do something that's going to make your job easier and maybe go away. You found a way to collect the data better. You found a way to analyze that data better. How do I move that down to my operator so that they can use that data and they can do that work for me so I can turn and focus to support the business, the team in a different way? So future-proofing yourself against the introduction of automation is being flexible. It is being ready to work as a team, but also understanding that your job should be to make yourself go obsolete so you can do the next bigger thing that's important. And I think that's an important piece that can be missed for operators on the floor, the people that are the direct labor, is that they see automation and they become afraid of it. They see it as taking away my work, as Ryan had pointed out. They got hired back. Introduction of automation, introduction of robotics has a responsibility too from the management of the business and from the team leads of the business to how do I redeploy these people to be of more value to the company. They're not of value just putting things together when I can do that a little bit easier, but maybe it's training them to use their robotic so that now they manage that cell of robots instead of just managing what their standard task was. So there's a growth that has to happen throughout that operation that as future leaders and future engineers, that you have to have that mentality of the person on the line and how do I bring them forward with me as I move forward so that the next group can come in and learn and be better and be stronger.
My students, you hearing that? Teamwork so important, right? Now you guys see the point of all the group work in the classroom every day, right? So hope all of you students embrace that going forward. Tom says I didn't coach them on those answers. So we're doing great for time. I've got one last question for you all, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for questions. Fady gave some great examples in his opening remarks about how automation is going to change careers, change them radically, maybe eliminate some. And you guys have already touched a little bit upon how business will adapt to them. And I would just like to hear one example of some specific career that in the next 15 years will be either radically changed or eliminated. And perhaps maybe an unexpected example, if you could think of one.
Yeah, so we had these questions in advance, kind of give us a chance to think about these. And I actually thought, we look at the industry today, and if we think about, fast food and things like that, we've seen the introduction of kiosks. Some of us may have interacted with them at an airport where you place your order and a person gets and makes your food and delivers your food. I see the next iteration of that is taking that person out of that role, and now you have robots that do that. And I think just this week in the UK, they have a burger flipping robot that was just given a job for 2 weeks to flip burgers, and so they're already starting to do these things. And I think we're going to start to see the introduction of robotics into everyday life because they've made simpler and simpler and simpler. And I know Ryan knows this very well, that it's much easier to program these things. It's much easier to interact with these robots, these collaborative robots. And there's a lot of effort to bring programming language to be common among all these different types of robots. So we can see that when something becomes more tangible, once we've understood the smartphone and how we use it, how we can bring robotics into that world. So now we have robots doing our vacuuming. Maybe it's a Roomba, but maybe it's actually a walking, talking piece because it's becoming more and more familiar and more easier for users to do that. So to pick on one thing, I think it's really hard because it's limited by the imagination of the person and how much time and effort they're willing to put into that. And there are many smart people up and coming and in the market that are trying to drive something very complex to something very simple, so adoption becomes that much easier and faster.
Thank you. I'm bringing I tried to find a non-obvious one. Laura brought it a little bit, but I'm trying to emphasize on it. The personal mobility for the elderlies, okay? We'll all get there, don't worry, at some point. So I take this example because I'm just living this with my mother, okay? Very personal slice of life. She's 91, since November, she's stuck in a wheelchair, okay? So I thought of all these things, you know, these caregiver or a senior home attendant. It's a hard job, okay? It's difficult for them, okay? To, even though they have some personal lift to lift the people, put in the bath, in the wheelchair, in the bed, okay? So this, I count on you guys to develop this in the future, to have a robot that will assist, you know, an elderly and say, okay, I want to go from a wheelchair to my bed, okay? Take me and bring me to my bed, okay? I want to go from the bed to the bath, okay? Or the bed to the restroom, okay? So it's all, it's difficult because these caregivers don't have all the time, okay, that they can devote. So if there would be a personal assistant that can look at you and with a camera and find out, okay, you're in that position, I need to take you like this and bring you over there, okay? So this is something that will be automated at some point. So this is a challenge for you guys.
I'm going to take a page out of my work experience here. At my company, we make custom configured products for our customers. About 95% of what we build every week is custom. We have a sales force that works with our customers to come up with these designs. And 10 years ago, we were getting napkins faxed to us with the design of what the customers wanted. And we had a group of designers who would use SolidWorks to then configure a library of components into an assembly. What we're doing now is we're working on a configurator, so that the job is someone who configures custom product, who actually does the design work and creates the drawing. We're now working with apps on iPads where the person out in the field will pick and choose and make the design on their iPad. That program then talks to SolidWorks and configures and makes the solid model in SolidWorks, and then verifies that all of the rules are met. It then makes a drawing from that, and then it automatically populates the bill of materials in our ERP system. We're working on that technology right now, so that designer function is going to be going away or minimized. And how do you future-proof? Because I'm going to go back to a previous question. You want to be the person setting up the rules and working on that maintenance of that system. Not to be an end user necessarily, but to be the person that's saying, this is what we want it to do. This is what we need it to do to meet market needs.
So I also tried to think about this and think of things that were a little bit out of the box. And one that I see that I don't yet know how soon it's going to be. It really just depends on, you know, as Laura was talking about before, the you know, rapid change and growth of some of AI. I do think there's some of a perception through the media that AI is almost further along than it actually is in reality. But there are some pretty cool things going on with kind of programming that programs can almost write themselves in some ways. So what I would say that may be drastically changed, not eliminated, but is actually computer programming. I think that it'll probably be more common in the future to, as a programmer, write or guide the programs that then write other programs. And as the programmer, you may not even really understand the inner workings of the final creation program. Maybe you want to write a program to achieve a certain task. You instruct an AI, a bot of some kind, to write code to achieve it, and it tries thousands and thousands of iterations with these incredible processors, and then figures out what finally worked. And if you just go on YouTube and look up kind of AI and kind of different genetic modeling and things that the AI can do to kind of test out and trial problems, it's pretty incredible. And so, you know, I think in the future, programmers would be more likely to guide these programs and actually doing the hardcore programming themselves.
Awesome, thanks. So at this time, we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. We have two student volunteers with microphones on each side. If you could raise your hand, we'll have a mic brought over to you for anyone who has a question. We have a couple right over here.
Hi, my name is Cheryl. And I have two questions to ask. So the first one is, when you're hiring someone, what are the things that impresses you? And secondly, if your job often have changes, what are the ways that you update your skills and knowledge?
So before I pass the mic, I'll thank you for the question. Address your first point there. What do I look for when I'm hiring? And I'm actually right in the process of doing this right now. And to kind of echo Tom's point from before, interpersonal skills come across fairly transparently in interviews. And one of the things that we look for, because we are a very customer-facing and customer service-centric company, and one of the things that you may not understand as somebody going into a technical or an engineering career is that oftentimes these roles, even though you are kind of the person in the background, you're still working with customers. And so it's very important for us to see somebody who could be a good team player, but is also going to build and work these relationships well. So somebody who can hold a great conversation and be very friendly and outgoing and things like that. That's just one thing I would note.
2 points on the interview. The first one is to be honest. Be honest and truthful. And you're going to be asked some hard questions. If you're asked a question to give an example of something you did wrong and you failed, don't say I was on a team and this person did something wrong and I went and I fixed it for him. Because I will tell you, I have not hired anybody into my group who answered that question that way. If you can't admit to, I have work to do in this area. No, I don't know everything about it, but I can learn that. I have some skills that apply to that. That's a big plus. The other one is, whoever you're interviewing for, do a little bit of research on what the company is, what do they do. Look at the mission statement of the company, because you'll see that on their websites, and pick just one of their buzzwords, because usually the mission statement will have 5 words, and integrity, strength, courage, whatever. Pull one of those, drop one of those buzzwords. That might help you out.
Yes, thank you. Again, you stole my punch. Okay, so personal, I will say interpersonal skills are much more important than any technical skills. You all have grades, good grades, I guess, okay? So is it B or B plus or A minus, whatever, okay? It doesn't really matter, okay? You all studied the same thing, okay? Yes, we need to pick the right person for the right job. So what will differentiate you is the interpersonal skills. Can you communicate? Are you shy when you want to present yourself? Can you speak up? That's important, okay? So please develop these skills. That will be very useful for you. And maybe another recommendation that learn languages. This is something, this will create opportunities for you in the future, definitely, okay? So don't think that English is the only, okay, I'm good, I know how to speak English, okay? If you know Spanish, French, German, if there's some other languages that you can learn, okay, this will create opportunity. I lived that, okay? So don't worry, okay? Thank you.
Can I just grab that back real quick on the whole language thing? On our shop floor, we have 14 languages. One of the ways we really became involved with North Shore Community College is we offer English as a second language at our site. But if you can speak 2 languages good enough to communicate with other people, that is a huge, huge plus.
Scott, I hate to put you on the spot because you're the last one, but all of those are really great things. I'm thinking of personal experiences, and I'm sure other faculty members have experienced this as well. You are in your undergrad, you're in graduate school, right? And you're in a very focused path. A bio major or a chemistry major, they take very specific courses, but everything we've been speaking about is very interdisciplinary. And so as an organic chemist, synthesis, right, I took very focused courses. What would be some courses for people who are interested in automation, but maybe they're a bio major? Like you mentioned SolidWorks, Tom. What are some other sort of key things that you think they could look up if they were interested to just take a course or get a certification in?
Yeah, it really kind of tailors into where you're expected to be working in the field you're expected to be working in. I look at vision applications, so cameras and the deployment of cameras. Back when they first started to come out, 15, 20 years ago, to the capabilities of today. They're being used in creative, different ways. So understanding vision application, especially for automation, for picking applications. So I think that's an area that may not be covered as well. But SolidWorks, having good statistical background, because you're going to get lots of data. And how do you analyze that data? And unfortunately, Excel only gets you so far. So you need to start to learn to use those MATLAB softwares, those Minitab type softwares, and using that analysis and understanding what that output is. So those are areas that I think tie in very well because it can be used in anything that you're doing, any test you're running, in any field you're running, knowing how to execute a DOE, how to analyze a DOE and understand the outputs of that. That's where I think that you can get a lot of knowledge that even when you're very focused in one area, having this broad spectrum on the other side of it. And I just wanted to close on the second part of her question there about how do you be adaptable and flexible as the work environment's changing. Subscribe to industry magazines. Once you start your work career, you're going to get phone calls all the time. Take the free magazine. Flip through it once a month. You don't have to read every article. See if there's something there. And reach about industries outside of that. So I get a lot of manufacturing machinist type magazines. It doesn't relate to my work. I don't machine parts where I work, but the technology there could be leveraged into our areas. Network, make friends outside of the company. I've made a few new ones today because we share very similar problems and we're addressing them in very different ways. And that's how you can make yourself very flexible for those activities. And just be ready to be an early adopter. Be looking out beyond what you're doing every day. Just be ready to be that early adopter. You're going to be on the cutting edge if you're that way. Instead of waiting for everybody else to catch up, you're there driving that activity. So that's how you can be flexible as your work environment is constantly changing.
Hi, I'm Christine Babcock. I'm the Veteran Services Coordinator here at the school. And I have a question from a veteran standpoint. In the Navy, I did a really technical job. I worked on infrared detection systems, and then I also was a calibration tech. So there's a lot of veterans who come from high-tech backgrounds in the military. What's a good segue for a veteran to come to a company such as yours and use their skills they learned in the military without necessarily having to go to college to get there?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I've had the experience of my prior career. We hired a lot of military personnel, and even at Abiomed, it is one of the founding parts of when we were looking to hire is we like to hire veterans also, give them that ability to come into the workforce because they may not have had that college education in the sense as we understand it, but they have gotten an education on the line, so they've got that street smart side of it. So what I look at is as veterans come in, you have to be able to give them that mission. That's where they've come from. They have that mission. So how do I voice that mission to them? So Abiomed, it's patients first. We live it, we breathe it, we do it all day, every day, and we see the benefits from it. So providing those veterans that mission so they understand what they're working for, and then helping them get the skills that maybe they lack in areas. So you may be very good technically at servicing, but maybe you don't have good design background. Maybe you don't have good presentation skills. It's being willing to offer those types of services to your veterans, but all your employees to make them better, more rounded people. So that continual education piece that's promoted from the business and not just from the individual is an important part of integrating veterans successfully into a work environment.
In Canada, it's a little bit different, so I'll make it quick. We do have programs that will let veterans or people from the Army that now wants to get in the industry. So it does apply a little bit differently, I should say. So, but we don't live that every day in our role anyway. And so it's, maybe I'll have a bit difficulty to answer this one.
We have a few veterans in my group, actually. I have one who works in the preventative maintenance department, who did maintenance on a ship. He was in I don't know exactly what his rank was in his particular skill, but we do offer continuing education for him. And another person I have is one of my engineering technicians who supports my development engineers, and really using his skills and the ability to follow very written procedures, what he's used to from the military, is a really huge add to us. If I could have everybody who would actually read every line of a procedure and check the forms like they have to in the military, huge add to us, helps us out, less errors in validation, things get done quicker. And once again, this person pursuing continued education with the company-funded program.
Yeah, so I think per Tom, it's kind of knowing your skills and knowing the things that you've learned and trying to make those connections. You know, you just know thyself in a way, right? Know what you're good at. And that goes for everybody. But certainly I think there's particular traits that a veteran coming out of the service may have in common, and maybe could work and learn from other veterans that have either found employment or are looking for employment in this kind of a high-tech career. I do think that there's a lot of crossover application where, you know, it's not always about the specific details. We talk about, you know, SolidWorks versus, you know, AutoCAD and some of these different CAD platforms and things. At least in my experience, there's a fair bit of crossover in these kinds of things. So while the nitty-gritty details, maybe it is really important that you're SolidWorks certified versus Inventor or Pro-E or something like that. But for me, not getting super in-depth on CAD type stuff, there's a lot of good crossover. I came from learning SolidWorks and I jumped into Autodesk Inventor, and within, you know, a month I was up to speed on that. And so my point on that would be not so much about CAD, but for just technology in general. Understand where the kind of connections are and how to leverage what you know to learn new skills and apply it there.
I think we have time for one more final question from the audience. We'll take two more questions from the audience.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Mboya. I think my question has been sort of touched on, but I'm going to ask. As a medical health science student, I'm already seeing surgeries being performed by robots. I'm seeing like organs, you know, being transported by drones and stuff, like across countries and nations and stuff like that. Like, as a student who's not typically interested in computer science or engineering and stuff, how can I better prepare myself without having to go through the courses? Because I know I'm probably going to fail those classes if I have to take them. So, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it kind of echoes your point earlier of, you know, how do you get exposure if you're not in one of these high tech, or, you know, well, you're in a high tech field, but not in you know, engineering or automation specific field. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the beauties of today is that we have tools out there like Arduino kits and drones, that hobbies in many ways that you can on the side play around with, but learn extremely valuable skills that translate. You know, if I have somebody come in and they say, you know, one of their big hobbies is playing around with Arduinos and programming logic with, you know, push buttons and relays and switches, that is almost 10 times more valuable to me than maybe some very specific in-depth controls course that somebody took that wasn't hands-on, that didn't get them, you know, the real nuts and bolts experience. So I would say, you know, dig around a little bit. Some of these tools that are super accessible, and I forget who had mentioned it earlier, but in this era of online videos and stuff, you can just go on and look this stuff up and figure it out for yourself. So just get out there and give it a shot.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Perfect example is what you said, the Raspberry Pi Arduino. But also, my grandson showed it to me. Google has, one of the Google Doodles was a programming, and it was programming a little character moving around a board, and it basically taught you computer programming, but at a level that you didn't even know you were learning it. What is out there, and it's free. Just look at it, same thing. You want to learn a little bit about drawing, there's Google SketchUp. It's free, has great tutorials and to teach you how to do some drawings and stuff. There's a lot out there that's available out on the web.
And it's surprisingly applicable. Right? Yeah, so I was just going to say, it's surprisingly applicable. Like, it's real stuff. This isn't just, toys and games. It's real, applied stuff.
I like your question. Actually, you don't need to go to classes because that's not your major. That's not what you want to learn. But getting into engineering, okay, and maybe there's a lot of things you can read and you can get access to, and who knows, it will develop the will to go into engineering. Why not? See, for example, surgery. You were talking about surgery.
Yeah.
We deal a lot with cameras and vision and 3D. We play with 3D cameras all the time in our group, and we develop stuff. And we go for measurements. So if in surgery, for example, I'll give you an example where okay, it's open, okay, you need to look inside, whatever, okay? So, but you need to figure out, okay, how big is that tumor, okay? How high is it, okay? So with these cameras, now with the software, you can figure out, okay, I need to make the right decision. How does it then measure, okay? I will make the right surgery for it. So this is all these tools that are indirect to you, but it's good that you know how it works, and you will develop that need, that will eventually.
So I'm going to kind of go off from a different angle. Okay. Look at her, look at anybody who's in a field where you're going to be interacting. That's your customer. You should be talking to her. What does she need to be able to successfully do what you need that system to do? How do I program it? How do I present it? How do I teach her? So that she doesn't have to know the nitty-gritty of the programming. She doesn't need to know how the vision system works, but she knows that this and this and this is what's important, and I know why it's important. So I think that the takeaway for me is, for the engineers and the folks that are looking to go into automation and robotics, is it's not just about the equipment that you produce, it's about your end user, and to talk to them and try to incorporate their needs into the system, because it makes their life a lot easier, because they don't necessarily need to or want to understand what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you.
A point Ghislain just mentioned, if anyone wanted to find out results from the 1920 gubernatorial election in Massachusetts, you would have had to go to the Secretary of State's office, find a book where they have hard copies of the results, and look it up. And I have a friend who developed the software, the first software that took all the hard copies of those results and put them into online databases. Now, he was not a programming major. He was a civics, government, and politics major in college, had no interest in programming. But he had really strong interest in this one skill. And so what he did is he went and he learned enough programming to do this through online courses, and a lot of it free. So a lot of people, it's not a lot of people who are passionate about software engineering who become software engineers. A lot of people, you're passionate about a problem, and you need to figure out a way to solve that problem, and the way to solve that problem is engineering. So, one comment, and then we have one final question.
Very short. I was just saying, what they're all saying is to use your smartphones for good, right? All right, so go to the tutorials on YouTube.
I think we had, okay, we have two final questions then.
All right. So this one really applies to everything we talked about today, especially with the automation. We talked about about the stages of education. We talked about the stages of employment. We talked about the stages of moving down further and enhancing your career and knowledge. One thing we haven't covered that I noticed is the transition from one to the other. Automation. How does a student, how does someone that's a little more seasoned, with more experience, less education, apply to an industry such as yours? My experience has, go online, you put in an application, you get, hey, you can email and seize it, even though you know your personal experience and your knowledge, whether in my case, in like military and civil, fits that position immediately, perfectly, but it doesn't have like certain words. It goes through like a filter or whatever. My experience is if I talk to someone, like I walk into the office, here's my application, here's my resume, here's my cover letters, here's my letters of recommendation. It's always worked. I got a job with GE Aviation in Maryland, literally walking in just for an application wearing shorts, t-shirt. The guy was looking for someone, and he happened to hear that I was looking for a position in, not manufacturing, but like repair for the C5 thrust reversers. I got a job literally that day. But I apply things online, I don't necessarily get that back. I think the students who might have the education, but not the experience, or veterans who have a lot of experience but not necessarily education, are having a lot of difficulty getting to the interview. So my question is, how reliant upon those filters and automated responses does your industry rely on, as opposed to do you or human resources? By the way, I would love for next time have someone from human resources here. Who looks at those resumes? Is it a computer or does an individual person look at it?
Yeah, so I don't exactly know how Abiomed does it, but I certainly can relate. I am in engineering. I design automation. I work with automation. I manage teams. I have a business administration degree. So if I apply for an engineering position, they want, a bachelor's in engineering and all this experience, a filter would take me out like that. So what it boils down to is networking. It's talking with people. You have industry here. It's going to events like this. It's participating in these types of events and making those contacts that can start to open doors that unfortunately an online application may not be able to do for you, because you get filtered out because you didn't have an education background, you didn't have that specific piece, even though you feel you're a very good fit for the job based on what you've done. So the best way to combat it is to make those networks and to not be discouraged. Because just because you don't have education in that field doesn't mean you can't do the job. I'm doing it today. I've seen many others like me do it. If you're passionate about it, you learn, you find a way to get there, and you keep working to do that. But networking is the best way to get there.
You hear that? Go say hi.
Quickly, your question, there is a filter, okay? There is a filter. I do not hire people, but I participate in hiring people. It's different. This is teamwork, okay? I work with human resources together, so they do a pre-filter. Yes, there is, okay? I ask for such skills, okay? Find me people that have these skills, okay? And then we go in interviews. We may have 6, 7, 10 people for the same job and interview, okay? And then we make selection. So we select down to 3, and then we select down to 1, okay? That's how it works. On the other hand, I will recommend that if you just don't send your resume, but follow up, reapply, just after a week, just phone call, hey, I sent my resume, did you have it? Is it okay, do you need more information? And a week later, you call back again, or you send another email, follow up, okay? So if you show interest, that may make a difference, okay? Between 2 persons who are about the same, okay? We have choice between this one and this one, but this one shows more interest. Well, why not? So this person may win. So think about that. Follow up on your resumes.
Yes, filters. you're going to find two types of hiring managers out there. There's the ones who are just going to take what the recruiters send them, and then there's the ones who are going to look at every resume that pops up, and that's the first thing they do in the morning when they get that cup of coffee. I'm the second type. I read everybody's resume. I look for those things, the content of the resume. What have I done? I might not necessarily have that SolidWorks skills, but I have AutoCAD or I have Pro-E. Put SolidWorks in there. Say that even though I don't have SolidWorks skills, because guess what? You just got SolidWorks on the filter. So, things to do. There's ways to beat the system, but there's also, as you find out, as your career moves on, is because no one works for one company anymore. Let's face it, most people have 4, 5, 6 career changes these days. You're going to get that next career through networking. That's the #1 way. The other way is you're going to see the difference in managers, and you're going to see how they build their team. Some managers don't really build teams. They just, I get people to fill roles. We're as much about the fit of the person as well as the skill set.
So I think a lot of what Tom just said, plus, I would say for us, we're a 50-person company, and I don't have an HR department. I am my own HR department. So, in many ways, I'm looking at these resumes, kind of like Tom was talking about, but the first thing I'm going to look at is a cover letter. So I hope you have one, and I hope it's personalized to the job that you're applying to. I know it's hard because you got to do a lot of this work, but that personalization makes a big impact because there is a real person on the other side after that filter looking at this stuff. And the other thing I'd add is you just have to get creative. Per your point earlier, you just have to get creative. You got to be your own salesperson. You're selling yourself and your services as an employee. And you have to get creative. That direct email that somehow got through to me is going to be so much more valuable, and because it got right to me, as opposed to the recruiter to the this, that, and finally ends up through a bunch of filters to me. So knocking on the door, going in and asking for somebody to follow up, the thank you emails, all that kind of stuff really, really, really matters and separates you from the rest.
All right. Well. Expert panel, thank you all very much for being here.